Sunrise Interviews is brought to you by Valley Strong Credit Union.
Welcome back. It is another Mindful Monday. It's a tradition we started during the pandemic here on 17 News at Sunrise, a time to reflect and focus on some positivity. Joining us this morning is Pastor Robin Robinson with City Serve. Good morning, Robin. Thanks so much for being with us.
Good morning, Maddie. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well.
I just want to let you know that this backdrop is, I'm not driving. I'm just sitting still.
We're glad to know you're safe. Perfect. Well, we appreciate you. We know you're a busy lady and you're joining us anyway, even from your car.
It's all good, man. It's all good.
Okay, so, you know, one of the things that I've been seeing so much, and it's so prevalent on social media, is so much disagreement and vitriol these days. And it's spilling over from social media into personal relationships if people don't see eye to eye about the various divisive issues that are happening in public conversation right now. What's a good way to take a step back from our views and kind of keep the peace with friends and family members, even if we disagree?
Well, you know, Maddie, I think one of the important things that we need to know is that everywhere we go right now, our lives are impacted by this kind of tense nature that's around us. It's just the nature of the culture that we're living in right now, for sure. But I think, you know, here's the thing we need to understand, first of all, Maddie, that we can still love people that we don't agree with. I think people taking a step back from that and not always having to have the last word, always having to be right. Everyone wants to have the right to express their own opinion. We all want that. But in the middle of that, there doesn't have to be dissension in relationships necessarily, because even though our anxieties are high, even though this becomes very emotional for some of us, because obviously as humans, like, we're passionate about what we believe in, but we have to remain rational in the middle of that. I would say work on being a listener, being a better listener for somebody. Don't always be the one that's chattering or talking, but step back and be a listener. I think that, you know, we got to remember the relationship as well. Like the people that we're dealing with on a daily basis, whether it's family or friends or coworkers, remember that the relationship overall is so much more important than always being right. And even though in your heart you may be right, you have the right to that opinion. But when we express that in ways that cause dissension, in a way that's not a win for anyone. So I would just say, as we step back, Maddie, we give grace. You know, the Bible clearly tells us that we should walk in humility, preferring others. And that doesn't mean that we have to have their opinion, but it means that we prefer to not cause more dissension in among relationship and conversations. And here's the other thing, Maddie, that I think is really important. There are some real conversations that have to take place. There really are, in our community, in our nation, in our friendships. There's real relationships that have to take place as we move forward. But in the middle of that, we have to honor and we have to respect, and we really have to keep the focus on our own attitude when we're talking with people, and step back and take a look before we always just respond or react to a situation. We need to reflect before we do that and take a moment and find that kindness in the middle of all that we do.
Yeah, we definitely want to be left with some relationships when, when the world starts to go back to normal. We don't want to lose friends over these disagreements.
I think, you know, we need to create a climate of unity. That's what if every individual person just said, I want to create a climate of unity, and in that remembering that we can love people that we disagree with.
Absolutely. I think it's so important to love people and have friends that you disagree with.
Absolutely.
What better way to develop empathy and open your own mind? You know, if we're feeling overwhelmed by the heavy conversations that are happening right now, which I know I feel that way a lot, what's a good way to step back and kind of de-stress and clear our minds?
Well, I think there's a few ways that you can do that. I think taking the time to step back and reflect on what's going on, reflect on that moment before you post, before you talk, you know, before you just begin to text people, just reflect for just a minute and give yourself a moment. I think all of us at times need to give ourselves a moment. It's the reason we give our kids a timeout, right? Some of us need to put our own selves on timeout for a minute and think through, you know, what are our core beliefs? Where does our faith come into this? Where does our love for other people come into this? And I think that's what we want our lives to reflect at the end of the day, even though there may be a disagreement. The second thing to that, Maddie, and I know you hear me come back to this, but what happens is when we start getting consumed with our own emotions and our own feelings and all of our own stuff, it helps us when we help somebody else. If we get the focus off of us, it will really help us to cope better with all of the other stuff, whether it's hard conversations, whether it's tense moments, in the middle of it, it will help us, I can promise you, to function better when we get our eyes off of just us and just me and get our head and our mind and our life and our eyes on helping someone else. It'll help us deal with life better.
So true. We could all use that right now, and what a better place our community would be if we all practiced that. Robin Robinson with CityServe, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Maddie. It's good to be with you.
Good to be with you too. Have a wonderful Monday.